Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah wa ba'd. So we continue and return to our study in this book, Hayatuna al-Usriya, or our family life between the reality and that which is hoped for. And we were discussing some of the problems that occur within the marriage, issues that there occur within the marriage, either by way of the husband or by way of the wife or by way of both spouses. And in this sitting, we're going to conclude the section dealing with problems, and thereafter, in the next section that we will cover, is going to cover some of the rights of the children. So the author, he mentions as-sababu at-tasi', or the ninth cause of problems between the spouses. The ninth cause of problems between the spouses is ihmal az-zawja khidmati zawjiha, the wife being negligent of serving her husband. The wife being negligent of serving her husband. Mind you, in the last section, we dealt with an issue, a problem that comes from the husbands in terms of him not having a weak shakhsiyah, him having a weak personality, and this leads to problems inside the household. Similarly, we discussed him having issues as it relates to his spending, his nafaqah upon his wife and his family in general. And so in this section, we mentioned this ihmal az-zawja khidmati zawjiha, the woman being negligent of serving or service to her husband. The Shaykh Muhammad Ghalib, hafidhahullah, he mentions la shakka anna khidmat az-zawja lizawji min al-umuri allati ta'siru qalbah. He said, without doubt, the woman serving her husband, the wife serving her husband, is from the affairs which it wins over the heart of the husband. وَتَرْفِعْ مَكَانَةَ الزَّوْجَةِ فِي نَظَرِ زَوْجِهَا, and it raises and elevates the status of the woman with her husband, or in the view of her husband. And this is the right-minded husband, because some men, they are unappreciative of any good that is done for them. Any good that the woman does, and he's not very appreciative of that. He doesn't display gratitude for that good that is done. And we know from the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he mentioned the women being the majority of the inhabitants of the hellfire, and the reason for that was their kufr. And when they asked, do they disbelieve in Allah, he said, takfurna al-ashir, that you are ungrateful for your husband, you're ungrateful to your husbands. And if a husband, he does good, he displays goodness to a woman the entirety of the time that he is with her, as soon as she sees one thing from him that she dislikes, she says, by Allah, I've not seen any good from you. The ulama, they say that, however, although the women were mentioned here in this narration, min bab al-ghalib, because this is the case with many of them, however, this occurs from the men as well. And it is even more blameworthy when the man is like this. The woman, she's a good woman to him. She takes care of his needs. She looks after his affairs, raises and cultivates his children in an excellent way. And she serves him to the best of her ability. And he's not appreciative of any of that, to the point that if she has a bad day, one day things are just off and she's not feeling it. She's not feeling cleaning up after all these children. She's not feeling cooking some big elaborate meal. She's not feeling it that day. And then he acts as though she's committed some grave atrocity, and he forgets about all of the days that she does serve him to the best of her ability, sees after his needs, and raises and cultivates the children in a good way. And he becomes unappreciative of all of those good days if he sees something from her that he dislikes. The ulama, they say that it is even more so blameworthy when a man does it, because not only is he imitating the female, but he's imitating the females that are from the people of the hellfire. The female, not even the upright and righteous females that he's imitating. He's imitating the women who are from the people of the hellfire. So it's even more so blameworthy when a man does it. But if the man has sound intellect, if he is upright, then when a woman serves him and she's good to him, he acknowledges that, and it raises and elevates her status within his eyes. لما تبذله من معروف في العناية به, and this is due to that which the woman exerts from goodness and excellence towards him and taking after his needs. والنظر في أموره وحاجياته, and her being mindful of his affairs and the things that he is in need of. And when a woman is like this, no doubt this is indicative of right policy and right-mindedness. She sees after the affairs of her husband, so she knows what time he has to be to work. She knows about his appointments. She makes sure that she's not transgressing as it relates to making him late to things that he has to be to and things like this. She helps him out to the best of her ability, being mindful of his affairs, and likewise mindful of the things that he is in need of. She's mindful of the things that he is in need of. Now, even more so than him, sometimes you find some of the women, may Allah Ta'ala preserve them and bless them, they're so on top of their game, they're more mindful of his affairs than he is. So when he starts running low on deodorant, he starts running low on certain things, she knows it and she's on top of it. And when he gives her that money to go get the groceries and get the things, those household things the house is in need of, she comes back with the things that he needs as well, because she knows that he's running low on these things, even when he's unaware. Now, this is no doubt a woman who's aqila, she's intelligent. وَتَجْتَهِدْ فِي الْحِرْصِ عَلَى رَاحَتِهِ, and not just that she is diligent to make sure that he gets his proper rest. To make sure that he gets his proper rest. Now, the man that goes out and he works and he breaks his back to come home and take care of his family and to pay the bills and so on and so forth, she makes sure that he gets the rest that he needs. وَتُحْسِنْ إِلَيْهِ بِتَنْفِيذِ كُلِّ طَلَبَاتِهِ, and she is good to him by way of seeing after all of that which he requests from her. And she makes sure that whatever request he has, she fulfills that to the best of her ability. فلا يفتقد شيئا إلا ويراها قد اهتمت به بنفسها, and he is not in need of anything except that he finds that she gives due importance to that which he needs herself. She wants to make sure that whatever he is in need of, he finds that with her. She is this is her himma. It's what she strives to do. She gives this a fair importance. Now, not that he makes this binding and a binding requirement upon her, but rather she makes it binding upon herself that whatever her husband is in need of, he can find it with her. دون الاعتماد على أحد سواها, such that she is not reliant upon anybody else in making sure her husband has what he needs. Now, وهذا كله, and all of this لا شك يحقق مصالح كثيرة مع الاستجابة للأوامر الشرعية. He says, in all of this, he says, without doubt, it actualizes many benefits. It brings about many benefits in addition to the fact that it is adhering to the legislative command. And not just is it going to bring benefit to the household, make the relationship stronger, build the bond between them, elevate her in her husband's eyes. Also, on top of that, she's doing what her deen has required her to do. She's doing what Islam has made binding upon her. Now, he says, as has preceded, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, لو تعلم المرأة حق زوجي لم تقعد ما حضر غذاؤه وعشاؤه حتى يفرق منه. That if a woman knew the enormity of the right of her husband upon her, then she would not sit down. She will not sit down while his lunch or his dinner is present until he has finished from it. Meaning she would busy herself with, and if she really actually understood this affair as it should be understood, she would busy herself and to the point that she wouldn't even sit down as long as the food has been presented in front of him until he has satisfied his need from it. Now, he says, فَعَلَاقَةُ الزَّوْجِ بِالزَّوْجَةِ عَلَاقَةٌ سَامِيَةٌ. He says, so therefore, the relationship of the husband to the wife, it is a relationship that is samiyah, meaning it is and it is a relationship that has been set in order from on high by Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. He has put this affair in place, and He has stipulated and legislated the way that things should be. So it is a divine relationship, a relationship that was founded by Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. وَمِنَ الْمُؤْسِفِ أَنْ نَرَى تَحَاوُلًا وَعَدَمْ حِرْصٍ كَثِيرًا مِنَ الزَّوْجَاتِ عَلَى هَذِهِ الْعَلَاقَةِ. He said, but what is extremely unfortunate is that we find lackadaisicalness and the absence of diligence with many of the wives as it relates to this relationship. فَتَرَى الْخَادِمَاتِ وَالْعَامِلَاتِ يَكُدْنَا وَيُنَفِّذْنَا كَثِيرًا مِنْ أَعْمَالِ الزَّوْجِ. And so you find that they have maids, and if the people can afford that type of affair, this is something which is quite common in the lands of the Muslims, that the people, they have housekeepers and maids and the likes of this. And the workers or the employees, the female employees, they are the ones who are taking care of who? Of her husband. The maid, you want some other lady taking care of your husband for you? Now, this is no doubt, it will lead to great trials and great calamities. So they have maids and female workers who are, they are the ones who are seeing after many of the affairs of the husband. وَلَيْسَ لَزَوْجَ يَدٌ فِيهَا لِانْشِغَالِهَا بِنَفْسِهَا وَمَا يَحْوَاهُ قَلْبُ أو قَلْبُهَا. And so the woman, she has no hand in that whatsoever. She's not cooking for him. She's not cleaning his home. She's not doing any of these affairs. She has no hand in that. And why? Due to her being busy with herself. Due to her being busy with herself and whatever her heart desires. فَتُقَدِّمْ رَاحَتَهَا عَلَى رَاحَةِ وَخِدْمَةِ زَوْجِهَا. So she gives presence to her rest and her relaxation, over that of her husband and over serving her husband. She wants to make sure that she's comfortable, that she has what she needs, and that she gets the rest that she needs, and she's not doing any of that or concerned with any of that for her husband. وهي بذلك تنأى بنفسها عنه شعرت أم لم تشعر. And so by way of that, the woman, she has elevated herself over him, and she has placed herself above him, whether she realizes that or not. Now, he says, and let us reflect and contemplate upon the importance of serving the husband and being diligent upon that. In a hadith that is reported by Al-Husayn ibn Muhsan from an aunt of his, that she came to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam lihajatin laha, due to some need that she had. فَلَمَّا فَرُغَتْ مِنْ حَاجَتِهَا سَأَلَهَا النَّبِيُّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. And so once she had completed that need that she had with the Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam, the Prophet asked her, أَذَاتِ زَوْجٍ أَنْتِ? Are you married? Do you have a husband? قالت نعم. She said yes. قال كيف أنت منه? She said, he asked her, what is his view of you? What is your husband's view of you? قالت, she said, ما ألوه إلا ما عجزت عنه. She said that I don't leave anything that he is in need of, except that I do it with the exception of those things that I'm incapable of doing. Anything he needs, I give it to him. And I serve him to the absolute best of my ability, except in those things which I'm unable or incapable of doing. Now, he said, فَانظُرِي أَيْنَ أَنْتِ مِنْهُ. He said, look at your state and your condition with your husband. This is the Prophet's advice to her, alayhi wasallam. Look at your state or your condition with your husband. Meaning, this is something you should focus on, and you should give due importance. Why is this? He said, فَإِنَّهُ جَنَّتُكِ وَنَارُكِ. Because he, your husband, is your paradise or your hellfire. He is your paradise or your hellfire. That's your solution right there. We all want a ticket. We all want a means by way of which we can get to the Jannah. The Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam is giving it to you. We all want to be saved from the hellfire. The Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam, oh sisters, he's given you the answer, the solution. This is your key to the Jannah. This is your means by way of which you can save yourself from the hellfire. Look at where you are as it relates to your husband and how you deal with him, how you treat him. And what view does he have of you? Because he, again, if he's a right-minded husband, if he's a husband who's just and upright in the way that he looks at you and the way he looks at all matters and all affairs, yani, look at your condition as it relates to your husband and what is his view of you. Because he is your paradise or your hellfire. If only we understood this hadith. هذا مقام عظيم قد امتن الله عز وجل على زوج به. He said, this is a maqam azim. This is a tremendous affair. It's a tremendous matter with which Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has blessed the wife. He has favored the wife with this matter. فَمَنْ أَحْسَنَتْ وَقَامَتْ مَا بِوُسْعِهَا دون تكلفة عليها فلا شك أن الجزاء من جنس العمل. So therefore, whoever does good in this matter and establishes this affair to the best of her ability without takallufa, yani without deeming it to be a burden. Because some of the women, they think it's a burden and they think it lowers their status and, don't you know all I do for you and so on and so forth. Right? Always constantly reminding him of what she does and so on and so forth. As if it's a burden and it gets on her nerves that she has this ticket to Jannah. It's irritating to her that she has this means that she can get to Jannah by way of. But long as she does that to the best of her ability, without deeming it to be burdensome, she does it with an open heart, understanding that that he is a means for her to get to the Jannah of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, then he says, Al-Jaza min jins al-amal. Then the reward that she's going to receive is from the same category as the action. So this concludes the ninth point. Now the 10th problem, the 10th sabab or problem that leads to, or issue that leads to problems, is atharu wasa'il at-tawasul al-usra, is the effect that social media has upon the family. The effect that social media has upon the family. The Shaykh, he mentions, inna min ni'am Allah azza wa jal alayna, from the blessings of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala upon us is technology. And these technology and these ajhiza al-haditha, these new devices and gadgets which we have with us, التي تثير كثيرا من الأعمال والعلم للناس. These devices and this technology which we have that facilitates and makes easy for the people many affairs, and likewise many aspects and means towards knowledge that we have with us within our pockets. ومن الواجب على العاقل أن يستعمل هذه الوسائل فيما يقربه إلى الله عز وجل وفيما فيه صلاح نفسه. So what is incumbent upon the aql, the one who has sound intellect, is that he utilizes these means in that which will bring him near to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and that which will bring about the rectification of his soul, وَإِعْمَارِ أُسْرَتِهِ, and that which will lead to the perpetuity of his and the stability and longevity of his family. وأن يكون المباح فيها مقربا لطاعة الله عز وجل ومعينا على ذلك, and that those things which we do with the devices that are merely permissible, because some things we do are outright haram. Let's just call it what it is. Some things you do with these devices are outright impermissible, and we take them lightly. Some things we do with the devices are obligations, such as what? We use these devices to keep family ties, so we're using that as something which will fulfill an obligation upon us, checking upon our mother, checking upon our parents, and the likes of this, keeping family ties as Allah Ta'ala commanded us to do. Some things we do are just permissible. They're just permissible, right? And such that you're not gaining a sin, and you're not necessarily bringing about a reward. It's just a permissible thing to do with the device. Perhaps you're looking at something, some educational, any animal video or the likes of this, looking at something funny, or getting caught up on the weather and so on and so forth. Simply permissible things, right? But the permissible things that you do, you have to make sure that those permissible things are closer to the obedience of Allah Ta'ala than they are to his disobedience. You understand? They're closer to obeying him than they are to disobeying him. He says that, and they are an assistance upon such. They are an assistance upon such. No, I'm not sure what happened. At any rate, he said it must be an assistance upon such. He mentions that نعم لكن لما حصل من البعض سوء استخدام لهذه الأجهزة أصبحت سببا للتدمير لا الإصلاح والتعمير. He said, but since it is the case that many of these people use these devices in that which is destructive and that which is counterproductive, then they have come to be a means for the destruction of the family and not a means for rectification nor the perpetuity of the family. وذلك لقلة الحكمة في استعمال الأزواج والزوجات لها. And this is due to the fact that many of the husbands and many of the wives both have a scanty amount of wisdom in how they utilize these devices. وتضييع الأوقات فيها, and they waste time upon them. They waste time upon them. والانشغال عن المسؤوليات, and these devices oftentimes busy them from responsibilities which they have, things that are incumbent upon them. فمنذ أن دخلت علينا هذه الأجهزة ترى جميع الناس منشغلين عن جميع الناس. He says, and since these devices have come to us, since the advent, I was speaking to one of my children, and this was maybe a couple of days ago, and she asked me, what did we do when we didn't have cell phones? And she like, how can you survive? How can you survive without a cell phone? Like, we did just fine without cell phones. Then we were just fine. You didn't talk to your friends all day. Talk to them when you see them, right? You may call somebody and get a busy signal, right? We had beepers. I showed her what a beeper looked like. What in the world is that, right? We had these pages and stuff like this. But since these devices came to us, the Shaykh, he says, you see that many of the people are busied from other people. They're too busy. They're too busy to communicate, too busy to answer a call, a text. They're too busy because they have other things going on. He says, they're busy, إِلَّا مَنْ رَحِمَ رَبِّي, except for those whom our Lord has mercy upon. الزوج مشغول عن الزوجة. So the husband, he's too busy for his wife. He's too busy for his wife. The phone has busied him. The device has busied him from his wife. نعم فتكلمه وهو مشغول بهاتفه النقال. So she is speaking to him while he's what? He's in his phone. Scrolling, right? She's trying to have a conversation and his focus is on his phone. He's scrolling. And likewise, the wife is busied from her husband by her phone. So he's talking to her, trying to get her attention. And she's scrolling. She's in her phone, checking upon ahwal and statuses and checking upon people who she wants to communicate with, and so on and so forth. The Shaykh, he says, صارت هذه الأجهزة ذا أثر سلبي عظيم على حياتنا الأسرية. And so these phones, these devices have a great detrimental effect upon our family life. لأنها فتحت بابا لتدمير الأسرة, because they have opened a door to the destruction of the family. فإلى جانب ما تتضمنه هذه الأجهزة من أمور تافهة. He says, because from one angle, these أجهزة, they have affairs that are أمور تافهة. They are destructive issues, destructive affairs that the people can, the phones these days, as one of the ulama pointed out, they're not just phones, right? The phone is not just a phone. The phone is a camera. The phone is a something to watch movies on, and the phone is all types of something to listen to music on. It's all types of affairs. It's not just the phone these days, right? It's a computer in your pocket. And so you are able to watch aflam, the Shaykh is pointing out, films and movies and series. Jazakumullah khair. and all types of series and Netflix and all kind of stuff you can watch in these phones. He says that wal umur habita, and other affairs that are lowly and despicable matters that one can find as a result of these devices. وكذلك تبرز القدوات من كل ساقط ولاقط فيها. He said, and so, people are exposed to all types of horrible examples and role models that we can find. So we end up taking every saqit and laqit, every lowly and despicable person, as an example and as a role model. So an individual, from the husbands and wives, they may look at some show, at some TV show, or some show which they're watching on their device. And they contemplate upon the affairs of the people in that series or that show that they're watching. And they begin to think that this person's life is the ideal. This person's thought process is the thought process that we're supposed to have. Now you find some of these people, these idiotic and imbecilic individuals, because the way things are these days, everyone has a platform to talk, right? So you get some individual who's into bashing women and speaking down upon women, and he gets a platform, and people start listening to him and thinks that, this is how we're supposed to think. This is the thought process we're supposed to have, right? So they become the ideal and the role model. And a lot of these people that are not even like that in their real life. Probably a cold-blooded punk, cold-blooded pushover in his real life. But he gets up on some type of podcast or something like that, starts speaking about women and bashing women. Because 9 times out of 10, he probably wants to be one. Now, people, they start taking this stuff as the ideal, thinking that this person is the person who we're supposed to be listening to. Now, so what happens is that he says that they have within them, or they have within these shows, any types of any ideals that are not realistic, and so it has an effect upon the family life. He begins to, the man he begins to look at his wife a certain way, or the wife, she begins to look at her husband a certain way based upon something that she's watching from these, these women who have these ridiculous thought processes, these feminists who have these crazy thought processes. And it begins to affect the wife and how she speaks to her husband, how she deals with her husband, and the way that she thinks. He says, and so the people, they busy themselves with this to the point that they take upon their speech patterns. They want to talk and take their slogans and their role models and start hitting you with every catchphrase that they found on the internet. Now, they begin to speak like them, and they begin to pick up their habits and busy themselves and waste their time in the marketplaces or in beautifying themselves by way of something which they saw on social media. And so they begin to decorate themselves, blind following those whom they find and see on these devices. He says, so who are you beautifying yourself for? And who are you decorating yourself for? فلا شك أن هذا الانشغال يسبب فجوة كبيرة جدا بين الزوجين. He said, without doubt, us busying ourselves with these devices, they cause and they create a great wedge. They place a great wedge between the two spouses. And they bring about, or he says, بسبب المحاولات الفاشلة لتقليد تلك الحياة الزائفة. And this is in people attempting to, they are attempting to, and these are failed attempts to blind follow the lives or the ideals that have been set within these shows and the likes of these things which they're watching on these devices. وَاتِّبَاعَ الْأَفْكَارِ الْخَاطِئَةِ, leaving or they are following erroneous thought processes which are spread upon the various media outlets. التي من شأنها التشجيع على حب النفس واتباع شهواتها, which lead to love of the nafs, and encouraging one to follow its desires. وهذا لا يليق بأسرنا المسلمة, and these affairs are not befitting and proper for our Muslim families. These things are for the kuffar. That's is why they don't have any success in their family life, and why they're getting divorced and they're getting cheated on and they're getting hurt and crushed and demolished. And when it starts happening to the Muslims, it's because we're following behind them, trying to do what they do, and we're leaving off what has come in the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of our beloved Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and how we're supposed to deal with each other, how the man is supposed to deal with his wife should deal with the husband, with the children, and so on and so forth. Now we follow behind them and we get their results. And we get their results. So he says these things are not befitting for our Muslim families. We have what is sufficient for us. وللأسف الشديد أن هذه الوسائل من أعظم أسباب الوقوع في الزنا العين. He says, so what is extremely unfortunate is that these wasa'il, these social media outlets and forms that we have, these devices that we have, they are أعظم أسباب. They are from the greatest means of falling into the zina of the eye. The zina of the eye. We know that the zina of the eye is what? Is the look. The zina of the hand is the touch. The zina of the tongue is the speech. Now the zina of the feet is the walking towards the act. And the private part either affirms all of that or it negates it. Now he says, but these devices are from the greatest means that lead to the zina of the eye, another al-muharram, that impermissible look. وقد كثرت الشكاوى من قبل بعض الزوجات عن نظر أزواجهن إلى ما حرم الله دون استحضار رقيب ولا حسيب. And many complaints have come from the wives. Many complaints have come from the wives regarding their husbands looking at things that are impermissible, looking at things that Allah Ta'ala has made impermissible without bearing in mind that Allah Ta'ala is watching over them and He will call them to account. So here he says, I want to draw the attention of the husband. لا بد لك من النظر إلى هذه المسألة بأهمية بالغة واستدراكها. He said, it is a must. It is a must, O husband, that you look at this issue with great importance. And you must give it great importance. فهذا أمر محرم لا تساهل فيه. Because this is an impermissible matter, and don't take it lightly. That looking at things that are impermissible upon these devices and the likes. Don't take it lightly, he says. Allah Ta'ala said within his book, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُمْ. Say to the believing men, lower their gazes and safeguard their private parts. Look at this. He mentioned right after lowering the gaze, what? Safeguarding the private parts. Why? Because there's a connection between the two. There's a connection between the two. A person doesn't lower his gaze, it leads to him doing things with his private parts that are impermissible, falling into something which is greater. So therefore, right after mention of lowering the gaze, he mentioned وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُمْ, and that they should safeguard their private parts. ذَلِكَ أَزْكَى لَهُمْ, that is purer for them. إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا يَصْنَعُونَ, indeed Allah is well informed of what they do. وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ وَيَحْفَظْنَا فُرُوجَهُنَّ, and say to the believing women as well, lower their gazes and safeguard their private parts as well. This no doubt is an important affair for the man as well as the woman. But the address of the Shaykh here is to the men. But for the man as well as the woman, lowering the gaze. As Shaykh Hassan Ibn Abdul Wahhab al-Banna, we heard him mention on one occasion how when the husband, he lets his gaze just roam freely, he looks at everything, looks at this, looks at that, all those things that are impermissible from women, then by the time he gets home, his wife has no more value. She has no more value. It's similar for the woman. She looks at this, she looks at men in the marketplace, she looks at men, she goes here and there. On the TV, she's looking at men. In her device, she's looking at men. By the time her husband comes in front of her, and she sees his belly sticking out a little bit, he has no more value. He has no more value. So he says that ثم أن في هذا دمار حياتك, and moreover, in addition to that, Yani this issue, it contains within it destruction of your life and destruction of your family and destruction of that which you have built from your home and the likes of this. فهذه الوسائل إن لم تكن عونا لك على طاعة الله عز وجل فتخلص منها وإبعادها واجب عليك. He said, moreover, these devices that we have, if they don't assist you and aid you upon the obedience of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, then he says, freeing yourself of it and distancing yourself of it is obligatory upon you. Wallah, we know some of our Shaykh, Mustafa Mubram. Yani, the Shaykh, he has a flip phone, a regular old flip phone. In 2000, what is this, 21? A flip phone, right? Old device. So if you know that these devices, yani, that we have, which they call smartphones, right? Which in reality you can't call something which is an inanimate object smart. But they call them smartphones, right? Yani, the reality is that if it is not bringing you nearer to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, then you should free yourself of it. You should get rid of it. You should get rid of it. He says that, نعم فلا يكون هذا الجهاز خفيف الحمل في يدك عظيم الوزن يوم القيامة. He said, in order that this device, it should not be light in your pocket. It's light in your pocket, but the sins that you carry by way of it are heavy on the scales يوم القيامة. He says that upon your back. بما يحمله من آثام, due to what these phones carry within them from sins and disobedience. فإذا فقحت هذه المسألة ورأيت أن هذا الأمر سبب لهدم أسرتك. So once you understand and comprehend this matter, and you see that this affair, this device, it is a means for the destruction of your family, فإما أن تلتزم معه بضوابط الشرع, then either you need to utilize it and hold it within the realms and the guidelines of the legislation, and you keep yourself strictly to these guidelines, أو تستغني عنه, or free yourself of it, وتتخلص منه, and get rid of it. وقبل ذلك كله, and before all of this, استشعار مراقبة ربك, and before all of this, bearing in mind and being cognizant and aware of the fact that Allah Ta'ala is watching you. Allah is watching you. When you think that you're alone and nobody can see you, you're away from the eyes of your wife, away from the eyes of your husband, away from the eyes of your parents. You think nobody can see you. Muraqaba Rabbik. Have muraqaba of your Lord. Be mindful of the fact that Allah Ta'ala sees you wherever you are, whatever you're doing. He says, وَحِفْظ نَظَرِكَ, and safeguard your vision. وَالْحِرْص عَلَىٰ أُسْرَتِكَ, and be diligent upon holding your family together. فَذِهَابَ الْأُسْرَةِ وَتَشَتُّتِهَا أَمْرٌ عَظِيمٌ, because the destruction of the family and the splitting up of the family is an affair which is tremendous. وَمُصِيبَةٌ كُبْرَى, it is a great calamity. The Shaykh, he says, I'm going to conclude these mushkilat, yani these problems. He mentioned several issues and several problems that we have to be mindful of and safeguard ourselves from. He said, I'm going to conclude these issues with nasa'ih lakuma ayyuha zawjan, yani with advices to you, O two spouses. And he mentions three advices. He mentions three advices. The first one, taghafala, is overlook. Learn how to overlook. Learn how to pardon and overlook. He says, فَفِي التَّغَافُلِ خَيْرٌ عَظِيمٌ, because in overlooking lies a tremendous amount of goodness. وَلْيُسَامِحْ كُلٌّ مِنْكُمَا التَّقْصِيرَ الَّذِي بَدَرَ مِنْ صَاحِبِهِ, and let each of you pardon and overlook the shortcoming that emanates from your companion. وَلَا تُدَقِّقَ النَّظَرَ فِي كُلِّ أَمْرٍ حَصَلَ فِيهِ نَقْص أَوْ زَلَلٍ, and don't be a precise reckoner. Some of the people can count every single mistake you've ever made. Don't be like this. Don't be a precise counter of someone's lapses and mistakes and slips. He says, فَإِنَّ طَبِيعَةَ الْإِنسَانِ مَجْبُولَةٌ عَلَى الْخَطَأ, because the nature of a person, the way that we're created, we're bound to make mistakes. Just the way that we were created, we were made like that. Naam. He says, وَمَا اسْتُبْقِيَ وُدٌّ بِأَعْظَمِ مِنَ التَّغَافُلِ. And love is not perpetuated between spouses with anything like or the likes of at-taghaful. When you're with somebody who overlooks your shortcomings and your faults, and you know for a fact you have them, but this person is overlooking day after day after day, year after year after year, and this is something which it makes the love last. It makes the bond stronger between the spouses. Secondly, he says, تَطَاوَعَ وَلَا تَخْتَلَفَ. He says, cooperate with each other. Cooperate with each other and don't differ. وَلْتَحْفَظَ زَوْجَهَا قَدْرَ زَوْجِهَا. And the woman, she should always strive to safeguard and to be mindful of and to elevate the status of her husband. وَتُعْتِيهِ مَكَانَتَهُ. And give him his proper station. وَتُشْعِرُهُ بِقَوَامَتِهِ عَلَيْهَا. And she should feel within herself that he is her authority figure. And it's one thing knowing this, right? It's one thing knowing this because it's in the kitab of Allah Ta'ala, Rijal Qawamun ala Nisa. We know the ahadith, so on and so forth. But actually feeling it inside of her soul, feeling that in her heart that he is her authority figure. And that's a whole nother story for some. It's a whole nother issue for some. Nah? But she must feel that inside of herself that he is in authority over her. He says, وَتُطِعْهُ فِيمَا يَطْلُبُ مِنَ الْأُمُورِ الْمُبَاحَةِ وَالْوَاجِبَةِ. And she must obey him in that which he requires of her from those affairs that are permissible and those affairs that are obligatory. وَيُقَدِّمْ الزَّوْجِ احْتِمَامِهِ لِزَوْجَتِهِ. Likewise, let the husband always give precedence to his wife. Let him give his precedence to his wife and give her due importance. وَيَبْذَلُ وَقْتَهُ لَهَا وَلِأُسْرَتِهِ. And let him strive hard to exert his time for her and for his family. وَيُؤَدِّ وَاجِبَاتَهُ. And let him likewise fulfill his obligations. وَيَبْذَلُ قَصَارَ جُهْدِهِ فِي تَمَاسُكِ هَذِهِ الْأُسْرَةِ. And let him exert everything that he has, all of his efforts to safeguard and to hold on to his family. The third advice, which he mentions, اعتراف بأخطائكما, is acknowledging the fact that you make mistakes. Acknowledging the fact that you make mistakes. Now owning up to your errors and your slips. And the important point, not just that, he says, وَلَا تَتَأَخَّرَ فِي ذَلِكَ. And don't delay it. Don't delay it. When a mistake is made, what does it mean by don't delay it? Some of the people, they don't acknowledge the mistake until the affair goes on for a long time. Person been pleading with you, trying to advise you, trying to get you advised, doing everything possible, and you're not owning up to none of that. You're not taking any responsibility whatsoever until what? The marriage is dissolved. It's over. And you say, well, I could have done things differently. In my last marriage, I could have did this, I could have did that. I should have did this, I should have done that. Right? Don't delay it until it's too late. Now, acknowledge the mistake that you made. Acknowledge the mistake that you made. It doesn't lower your status if you say that you were wrong. Hey, I was wrong here. I apologize. I'm sorry. It doesn't lower your status. Now, likewise, he says, تَوَاضَعَ فِي حِلْ الْمَشَاكِلِ. Humble yourself. Humble yourself in order to resolve problems that occur. He says, because in humbling oneself and utilizing wisdom, it will bring about reconciliation and it will bring about goodness for the family. He says, and you will be able to sail in a ship of a happy family life with goodness and happiness between you and for your children. The Shaykh, he concludes by saying, for asbab sa'adatina قَدْ بَيَّنَهَا اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. He said the means that will lead to our happiness, Allah Ta'ala has already clarified them for us. And likewise, the sunnah of our beloved Prophet alayhi wasallam has clarified these matters. ثم في سير الصحابة وسلفنا الصالح المواقف الكثيرة النافعة في ذلك. Moreover, he says, within the stories of the Sahaba and our righteous predecessors lie many tremendous and beneficial affairs connected to this. فَعَلَيْنَا أَن نَبْذُلُ جُهْدَنَا فِي اتِّبَاعِ ذَلك. So it is upon us to exert all of our efforts in following behind this, and to be pleased, with what Allah Ta'ala has decreed for us, and to suffice ourselves with our families and our wives and our children and our relatives and the likes, anticipating in that the reward of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And the Shaykh, he concludes with the supplication, "O Allah, make our endings good in all of our affairs, and rectify our affairs, and give us success to the means of goodness, and success indeed you are the hearer, the near, and the responsive." Now, we conclude with this, inshallah ta'ala, and again, next class, it will be regarding the rights of the children in Islam. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.